I'm Andru Edwards. You're watching Gear Live, and in just a few days, the Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S will be released. The next generation of gaming is upon us, and in this video, I bring you my Xbox Series X review. Let's do it. What's going on, Tech Squad? Andru Edwards here, and as I mentioned, today we are taking a look at the Xbox Series X. And I asked you guys what you wanted to know about the Xbox Series X, and a lot of the questions pertained to the speed claims that Microsoft has made, and I have several thoughts on that. So let's start with the one that impressed me right out of the gate, the instant on functionality. There's not much to this one. When you pick up your controller and press the button to turn on the Xbox Series X, within a couple of seconds, you're sitting at the home screen logged in. This happens so fast that often it's my TV catching up to get the HDMI feed onto the screen. This is a huge difference from even the Xbox One X, which I felt like was starting to show its age, both with how long it took to boot up, even when I had instant on enabled, and some of the sluggishness around moving through the dashboard. The Xbox Series X is a night and day difference. Now, I have much more to say on the different ways that the Series X just makes everything so much faster after using it for a couple of weeks, but let's quickly take a tour of the console. On the front, you've got the 4K Blu-ray disc drive with the eject button. You've got a USB-A port and the pairing button, and of course, the power button. Then around back, you've got two more USB-A ports, a gigabit Ethernet port, HDMI out, a port for the power cord, and the storage expansion, which allows you to use proprietary super fast storage cards to play Series X optimized games if your internal storage isn't enough for you. Now up next, let's talk about the buzzwords. 4K, 60 frames per second, and 120 frames per second gaming. And let's make this clear. There is a huge difference between constantly hearing talk of 4K, 60 frames per second gaming, and 120 frame per second gaming, and it's totally different to actually sit down and experience it. If you're playing your Xbox Series X on a TV that supports these modes, the buzzwords fall away and it becomes all about the experience. Now, me personally, I'm not the biggest Forza guy, for example, as I prefer arcade style racing games, but I could not put Forza Horizon 4 down. Another game that I held off on playing until I got the Series X in was Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which supports 120 frames per second. Now, this game was already gorgeous, but the insane fluidity of that high refresh rate brings it to a completely different level. Gears 5 runs at 120 frames per second, 2 in multiplayer, and that silky smooth experience makes a world of difference. So again, all these are things that I honestly got tired of hearing about. You can't really see the 4K HDR 60 or 120 frame per second gameplay when you're watching a teaser on YouTube. But if you order the Series X and have a compatible TV, you will definitely be happy in under a week. Oh, and if you're wondering which TVs I've used for testing, I used the LG G10 Gallery Design OLED, which I've got back here. I also used a LG C10 OLED and a Samsung Q900R 8K TV. I have video reviews on each of these TVs, and I'll link those down below if you're interested. Okay, next let's talk about quick resume. On the Xbox One, you can have a single game suspended, and that would allow you to do something else like watch a streaming video on Netflix and then go back into the game later where you left off. But if you launched another game, then that first game would no longer be suspended. On the Series X, you can have multiple games suspended, and then you can jump into them with quick resume. And the most I've seen that I could suspend has been 7 games, with the majority of those being previous generation titles, but mix in current gen and it drops to be closer to about 5 games, which is still super cool. It'll actually maintain the saved state even if you unplug and move the Xbox Series X to another room to play on another TV. Plug it back in, and you can still quick resume into any of the games that were saved. This is great if you're playing the same handful of games for a bit, but if you're diving into Game Pass and jumping in and out of like 20 different games, you won't get a lot of use out of quick resume because it's going to be emptying that quick resume cache due to the amount of games that you're playing. Also, it definitely doesn't work for online games, of course, where you're playing with other people in a lobby, but for single player and local multiplayer games and campaigns, it's just another thing that adds to the speed of this console. Now, another feature that adds to the speed of the console is the much faster loading times. This pertains both to new Series X games that run on the Velocity architecture, which takes advantage of the insanely fast internal storage of the consoles, obliterating loading times. However, with Microsoft pushing Game Pass Ultimate so hard and with several million gamers subscribed to the service, you'll also likely end up playing a bunch of backwards compatible titles as well. The nice thing is that with all the power in the Series X, even games that don't use Velocity will still see a very significant boost in loading time. The Outer Worlds loaded 3 to 4 times faster for me, and even games like NBA 2K21 when playing the previous gen version had much shorter load times than what I was seeing on the Xbox One X just a few weeks ago. So we've got Instant On, we've got 4K 60 and 120 frames per second, we've got quick resume of games, we've got faster loading times, which all combine together to make the Xbox Series X instantly feel like a much faster, true next generation console. But then there's also the fact that Microsoft wants the new Xbox hardware to run anything Xbox, which takes me to backwards compatibility. I mentioned Game Pass Ultimate a few minutes ago, and it bears repeating that there are a lot of previous generation games that are amazing. There are games that you may not have ever played because you didn't own an Xbox or just never got around to them if you did own one. For me, The Outer Worlds and Ori and the Will of the Wisps are 2 of those games. The thing is, when you play them on the Series X, you get a much better experience, more stable frame rates, higher resolution on games that use variable resolution switching, and even auto HDR, which takes games that were not released with high dynamic range data and automatically adds it in to give them an automatic graphical upgrade. Now, other questions I got were about the new controller. The Xbox Series X controller feels very similar to the Xbox One controller. The differences are in the feeling of the plastic itself, which is a softer touch plastic with texturing on the triggers and the back of the controller grips. There's also a USB-C port instead of micro USB, which is a nice addition. And the new D-pad shape, which I like, it just feels more clicky. And then there's the share button, which lets you tap to take a screenshot of what's on the screen right now, or tap and hold to save a recording of a clip of what happened in your game over the past 60 seconds. Having that there should make it easier to actually share your game content on your favorite social networks. I should also mention that the Series X stays super quiet. You can barely tell it's on, which is nice. In fact, if it didn't have that glowing Xbox logo on the front, I honestly wouldn't know that it was on at all. Now, as for the things that I wish were different, first, the amount of storage. I do wish there was more in there than the 1 terabyte, since games are gonna be so much larger. The 9 Xbox Series X versions of games that I have stored internally on the console take up about 53% of the storage. And that includes a few older titles that got the next gen upgrades. So on day 1, half my internal storage is used up. Of course, you can pick up the Seagate expansion card to add an additional terabyte of storage. And I do understand not wanting to have multiple SKUs on store shelves, but I would have liked the option to pay more to get a 2 terabyte console rather than just a 1 terabyte console. I also wish there were faster USB ports. The Series X stays with USB-A ports that support USB 3.1. There are no USB-C ports at all, which means none of the faster 3.1 Gen 2 or 3.2 ports that support much faster speeds. We do see these ports on the PS5, and I had hoped to see similar here from Microsoft on a console that you may be holding on to for the next 5 years or more. Now, one person asked me which games they should try on day 1 when they unbox their console, and I'd say if you want to see what the Xbox can do with some of the new next-gen features, I would definitely try Forza Horizon 4, Gears 5 multiplayer, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, NBA 2K21 next gen, so not the previous gen version, but the next gen version, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and Mortal Kombat 11. Halo Infinite was delayed, so it won't be a part of the launch. However, Halo Master Chief Collection has been upgraded for the Series X, so you can definitely try that out as well. Now, most of these titles are available on Game Pass Ultimate, so if you're a member, you're good to go. And if you've never signed up, you can grab a free trial when you get your Xbox Series X or S in hand. And by the way, I also have a video showing you how to get 3 years of Game Pass Ultimate by flipping your Xbox Live Gold for $1. So the question after using the Xbox Series X for a couple of weeks is, should you buy one? And my answer to that is an emphatic yes. If you care about the specs and the speed that I mentioned, you won't be disappointed with what the Series X has to offer. If you want crazy speed and want to game at high refresh rates at 4K resolution, whether that's now or in the future. Now, if you don't care about 4K in particular and do all your gaming digitally and have no use for the disk drive, then the Series S might be more your thing. But for me, Microsoft built something really, really special with the Series X, and I'm super excited to see where they take it going forward. Now, let me know, did you pre-order an Xbox Series X or Series S? And if you did, what features are you looking forward to most from the console? What makes it feel next gen to you? And what games do you plan on playing on day one? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll meet you there for further discussion. Of course, we'll have way more on the Xbox Series X coming up on Geared Up. Geared Up is the show that I do each week with John Rettinger, where we talk about the latest in tech, gadgets, and games. And the next episode actually is going to be a very special one because we will have someone from Microsoft and someone from Samsung to talk about the collaboration that they're doing in cloud gaming. Until next time, thank you so much for watching as always, guys. I appreciate your support. I'm Andru Edwards, and I will catch you in the next video.